Okay, so I'm putting this Edpuzzle together as kind of a unit review. We're approaching the end of the unit. Actually, we've completed all the material for the unit. I do want to stress, though, that the graphing, the similar figures, will not be on the test. I wasn't there to present the material. I haven't seen you guys since last Thursday, so I didn't feel real comfortable including that on the test. But I also don't want to wait another week to have a test over this. So that will not be on the test. Those of you that have done the work, there's been some hiccups here and there, but for the most part, you've done okay. If you haven't done the test or done that material with the graphing, it's worth going back and doing. So I just like to kind of jump in and kind of piece by piece work through this. So again, it is an Edpuzzle. So yeah, you'll see the questions pop up here in a minute. So solving a basic proportion. Take a second, work this one out, see what you can do. All right, solving this is pretty straightforward. You're going to cross multiply. And then once you've cross multiplied, you just need to divide by 3 to get your answer of 10. This one's a little bit more complex. With this binomial in the numerator, just treat that as if it has parentheses around it when you multiply. Okay, cross multiplying will give you 9x plus 54. And then this one will give you 40. Pretty basic algebra steps here. I got negative 14. Divide out your 9. This is negative 1.6 when you divide. Rounded to the nearest tenth. This was 0.5 repeating. Some of you are still struggling with rounding decimals. I want this rounded to the nearest tenth. So look at the second number. That digit is a 5 or bigger, which means that 5 here, the first 5 is going to round up to a 6. This is your answer. Decimals are okay on these as long as you deal with them appropriately. Okay, last proportion. Again, parentheses here, cross multiply and solve. So when I cross multiply, again, once you get that first step of multiplication done, these are pretty straightforward equations to solve. And then moving on into the actual kind of the meat and potatoes of this, or what you're actually trying to do with similar figures. When you're working with these, you've got to set up the proportion and solve. I'm asking you to find this side right here, EF. What is the length of that? Set up a proportion and solve it. I always start building my proportions around what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this value for X, so I'm going to start with that. X is for side EF, so it corresponds with UT. I'm going to set that up in a proportion with 50, the length of UT. My other ratio is going to use the 21 and the 35. Since I started in this smaller triangle, I'm going to have to start this ratio with the smaller triangle as well. Cross multiply and solve. $35x. Then 21 times 50, 1,050. Divide out your 35. You got 30. Okay, that side's 30. Okay, same setup. Make that a little bit bigger for you guys. Whoa. Okay, set up a proportion and solve for this missing side ST. Again, I always start building with the side I'm looking for. So X over, that is ST. ST here matches up with SF in the other triangle. So that's going to be X over 18. And then 77 over 33 for the other one. When I divide, I got 42. Okay, this last set is slightly different because once you set up and solve your proportion, you have to plug your answer back in. Okay, set up your proportion and solve. All right, same deal. I'm starting with 2x minus 3. That is GF. GF matches up with QR, so that's going to be over 56. And then my other ratio is going to be 8 over 64. Don't worry about these big numbers, guys. I've been encouraging you to use calculators all year. It's 192. When I add 192, that's 640. X is 5. Okay, so your value for X is 5. My follow-up question is, what do you get for the length of GF when you plug that 5 back in? Right? If I plug this 5 back in, that's 2 times 5 minus 3. Just do basic arithmetic there. 2 times 5 is 10, minus 3 is 7. That length for GF is 7. All right, one last one where you have to plug it back in, and then we're going to wrap this up. All right, starting with 7x plus 3. That matches up, DE matches up with RQ, 156. And then 14 over 91. 637x when you distribute plus 273. 2184. Okay, all that for this small little answer here. X is 3. Okay, so if X is 3, find the length of DE. That's 24. So these last two problems, I'm calling these shadow problems because it deals with the shadow of a figure in relationship to its height. So for both of these, what you're looking for is you've got the height of a figure and the shadow it casts, and then a similar figure's height and the shadow that it casts. So kind of using that setup, you're getting the 4 pieces of your proportion that you need. So take a second, solve the first one. Okay, so here's what we're looking at. We've got a tree, 4 meters tall, casts a shadow 15 meters long. A similar tree's height, if it casts a shadow 20 meters long. So what we're looking at is a straightforward proportion. The big tree's height over 4 is the big tree's shadow over the small tree's shadow. Now cross multiply and solve here. 15x is 80. So you're going to take 80 and divide it by 15 and round to the nearest tenth. That is 5.3. Now, when you do these, you don't have to give me units, but that is 5.3 meters. Everything else is in meters. Your answer is going to be in meters, but don't worry about inputting that for me. Okay, the second one here, very similar setup. Try and just follow the pattern of the first one if you need to. All right, so the setup would be I've got a tower, cast a shadow 7 meters long. A vertical stick casts a shadow of 0.6 meters long. If the stick is 1.2 meters long, how high is the how high is the tower? So the tower over the stick equals the shadow of the tower over the shadow of the stick. Those are decimal points, sorry. So when I cross multiply here, I've got 0.6x equals 84. I get a nice even 14. Okay, so the excuse me. So the tower is 14 meters tall.